Meet David Amos, the managing director of Plusero Limited, who has built multiple high-performance teams, led innovative change projects. With his involvement in the green hydrogen and clean power solutions, Amos combines deep technical insight with strategic vision, making him a highly sought-after leader in Plusero Limited.
One of the problems that anybody who is trying to bring in a new technology will face will be the status quo. What we are using already works. Why should we change? You're talking about hydrogen. Do I need to buy another generator? Do I need to? All of those things. And plus the fact that we as human, we like our comfort zone. If we've been doing it so far and it's been working, why change it? Yeah. What's the hassle for? So which will now then bring me to the next couple of questions in regards to you as a person. When you convinced yourself, what were the steps you take? How did you find funding for this idea? Let's talk about funding, because that's one of the major. You said 80% of the businesses that start in the first 1 to 2 years, they shut down because they run out of money. How did you fund this?
And that continues to be a challenge in the industry that we are working in, because we need to buy or build equipment, and we need to build plant to produce hydrogen. So it's quite a high capital cost business. So it wasn't something that we could have done without bringing in some funding. So how did I approach that at the start? It was through a sort of combination. One is I was able to persuade some partners to give me the equipment to get going for free.
Let's dig into that, because I did as you've mentioned that now, I remembered, was it Bill Gates or Steve Jobs who wanted to build his first computer and called up this big technology company. He looked into the phone book, looked for the name and called them that I need this, and they gave it to him, and that's why we have Steve Jobs of today. Please, can you talk a little bit more about that?
So one of the things I learned over the various jobs I've done is that if you want somebody or an organization to change or do something that you want them to do, there needs to be a win in there for them, and so you need to understand what are the wins that the people that you're working with want, and are you in a position to offer them any of those wins. So in relation to getting this equipment for free, this is still very early days in the hydrogen sector. Very, very few people had actually put any hydrogen equipment out there, or it wasn't being used for anything. So I went to a company that had developed a hydrogen generator, but it had never been used in a real life situation. So they tested it and they demonstrated, but no, they hadn't actually got it out into a real life deployment. So I went to them and said, look, Edinburgh International Festival, the largest cultural event in the world, has said they would be interested in having some of their events powered by hydrogen at this year's Edinburgh Festival. We'd like to use your generator for that, so that you're going to, we'll give, there'll be lots of great publicity. PR for you out of that. But it's a chance to demonstrate that the equipment that you've developed can power this. So that was a big win for them. So they were happy to supply us with the equipment. I persuaded a Scottish company to supply us with a second-hand electrolyzer that they had, which allowed us to produce the hydrogen that we used for these demonstrations. And I persuaded Scottish Government, who just launched their hydrogen strategy, that I wrote to the then Energy Minister, Paul Wheelhouse, and said, it's a great strategy, Minister. How about we demonstrate, some practical example of that strategy by getting a Scottish company to power Edinburgh International Festival events with Scottish hydrogen, and you could use that as a case study, and to my eternal gratitude, they agreed to give us a grant. So, but that was because they then they could then point to, and here's a practical example of what we're talking about in trying to develop this hydrogen economy in Scotland. So there's a bit of beg, borrow, and steal. If you can do that, if you can persuade people that it's in their interests. I put money into it and have continued at various points to put money into the business from personal savings. I worked for nothing for quite a while in order to not take money out of the business. Some of my colleagues worked for nothing for a while as well, again, to which I'm eternally grateful. So that sort of sweat equity thing played an important part in Plus Zero's development. We have managed to get a small amount of investment in, which was a down payment on what was supposed to be a bigger investment, and we're still waiting for that bigger investment to come. I remain confident that one way or another it will come through, but the investment environment for small businesses, particularly when you're in a sector that is regarded as quite early and quite risky, it's been very difficult to get that equity and investment over the line. So
you've done really well in this amount of time, and from what you've said now, I see the role of partnership and persuading people to come into partnership with you. Can you give me a blueprint, a roadmap on how I can form partnership for any idea that I have? This is for people who are watching. How should you think about it? How should you approach it? Because the way you combine all of these elements together to make something amazing, I want you to lay into it and give us, because I don't want to.
So there's probably two things. Maybe the first just goes back to what I said about if you want somebody or an organisation to do something that's going to help you, you need to work out what's the win for them to do that. So and it's the same with partners. If you want, and partnership has played a critical role in Plus Zero. We worked very closely with a lot of partners that have played an important role in helping us get to where we are. But that was always done on the basis of understanding what it was that Plus Zero could offer them. So that's the important first thing. If you want to get involved with partners and see how people can help you, you have to be able to first work out what's in it for them. What can my company or my innovation, my idea do to help them as well? The other is, and you do this, and the sooner people you do this, the better. Even before you've got an idea, I think it will always pay back. It's always good to go out of your way to help people. So I personally, and Plus Zero now, if somebody comes to us, whether it's the hydrogen sector or whatever, and asks if we can help them do something, we will, unless we just can't, we will invariably try and help them out. And that comes and pays you back in spades in the future. If you because if you then think, okay, well actually that company could help us now, you're already in a good place with them, because they previously got some benefit from you that that you've offered them, and gone out of your way to kind of help them when you didn't have to do that. So, and I've just, I guess it's just part of my personality, I've always been very happy to help people and do stuff for them, and enjoy doing that, feeling that I've helped somebody out. But I've observed through my sort of career and business work that if you take that into a business environment, ultimately it is going to help you out a lot. So when you do eventually have an idea, you think, okay, well, these guys that I'd previously spoken to or helped out, they might be able to help me with this. So yeah, do what you can to help people if anybody ever asks you to.
So, in forming partnership, the first thing we need to first of all be sure of is how will this thing benefit the other person? What's in it for them?
Yeah.
Then you also try as much as possible to provide value to other people, just in case some days you may need to call on those people. Is that what? That's the summary.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, also you have to. You want to be sure that the partner that you think can help you is going to be able to help you. So, you really understanding what they do, what their technology or what their service is. So there's no point in spending a lot of time trying to create a partnership with a company that ultimately isn't going to, be a good fit for what you're trying to achieve. So that's just basic due diligence, though, I think.
So what drives you to innovation? How do you think about innovation? Because what you are doing is very, very innovative. You are spotting, I see from our discussion, you sort of know how to spot opportunities, gaps that you can plug in, that you can plug your business into. How can I have that kind of mindset?
So I'm a very curious person. I like to know how things work. So I like to know how companies, how their business works, how they make things, how they do things. I've just always had a fascination, particularly in how humans make things in industry. And my first own business had a product that could be used in a variety of industries, and while the business financially wasn't successful, it got me into a huge range of different companies and organisations and industries, ranging from the Bank of England Printworks to the company that makes glass eyes for the NHS, and a whole host of things in between. Wow. I was just utterly fascinated in all of these organisations about how they did their business. A lot of my career has been based on looking at how you can improve how you do your business, how you're organised. So I come at it with a mindset that is really curious about how stuff works and how you make stuff, and a sort of just a personality that likes to see how things can be improved. So I then bring in my knowledge of what you can do with hydrogen technology to and that helps me identify, okay, well, actually hydrogen technology could help this business in here. Equally, if I don't think it would help, then I'm not going to take it in, because again, I see absolutely no point in trying to sell somebody something that isn't going to benefit their business. So I'm just naturally good at seeing how something that I've got could help a business, because I'll have first taken the time to understand how that business works, what it needs to be successful, and I'm generally quite good at working out if what we've got can help them.
So what I'm hearing you saying is you first of all identify and understand how that business,
I think
business works.
That bit is critical. If you don't have a curiosity and a wish to understand your customer's business, then you're not going to be able to. You might be able to sell them something once, but if you're trying to sell them something that ultimately isn't going to improve things or make their business better, then they're not going to buy it a second time. So I would say it's much better to put the time in to understand that customer's business, the people that you're wanting to sell to first, so that you can work out, does what I offer actually offer them something that's going to help them. So yeah, that's a critical one, I would say.
Wow, that's really incredible. That's really incredible. The industry you play in, I've had maybe a business shut down maybe 5 years ago in that industry because funding, which is quite understandable here in Scotland. How are you taking care of funding for day-to-day operations? How are you doing?
Yeah, so we've got two sources of we did have three sources of funding until my money ran out. So I've put exhausted my own resources in the business. So the business now runs on the basis of revenue. So we are revenue generating
Awesome.
and government innovation grant funding. So those are our two sources of revenue. In the UK, I think both the UK government through things like Innovate UK and the Scottish government as well have played quite an important role, certainly in my sector, in providing grant funding that helps companies to develop their ideas, develop their products, get things out there. So I think that's a very important part of the UK innovation sort of scene. And we have been seeking equity investment for over 18 months now. We have an agreement, but the investor themselves is waiting to get their own deal over the line, so which is taking much longer than we had expected. So, but we've got the business to a point now where we have two different sides to the business, if you like. We've got what's called Plus Zero Power, which is the company that focuses on the applications that the customers would use, providing the hydrogen technology and the hydrogen to them. And then there's Plus Zero Energy, which is the company that's focused on building hydrogen production facilities. So Plus Zero Power is now at a point where it can grow through revenue without private investment. Now, it will be slow, and it would be better if we could get some investment in. It would just accelerate things a bit. But we're on a growth path now that we can slowly build the business through revenue. Plus Zero Energy is because it's building facilities, requires capital. We managed to bring in a joint venture partner for the project we're building in the Western Isles at the moment to help address the gap that we have in funding because our equity investment hasn't got over the line yet. So again, that's collaboration and partnership with a bigger Scottish renewable company that is themselves moving into the hydrogen sector and could like the project that we're doing in the Western Isles, but also saw that could be a good learning curve for them in advance of building their own facilities. So there was a real kind of synergy between what we were needing, which was funding and engineering resource, and what they were looking for, which was to go through that learning curve and get their team the opportunity to sort of work on somebody else's facility before they started building their own.
Wow.
So we used a joint venture structure there in order to bring that finance and resource in. So we set up a joint venture company to run the new facility when it's up and running.